question we've all been waiting for. The number one rule is, are you protecting all your joints at all times? And that's kind of, I say that tongue in cheek a little bit, because like, how can you think about all your joints at all times? You know, if you can't, I can't even do it. So like, I'll be doing something, and the PTs will be like, Heather, tuck your butt in, like, you know, like, oh, you're right, you know. So you do the best you can, okay, to protect all your joints at all times. Whenever possible, staying pain-free. And so what I find with my patients is that the window of pain-free is like, that's why to start with. It's like everything has to be perfect for it to not hurt, you know, and that's really hard. You can't feel where your joints are in space, you know. And so we try to find the right exercise that doesn't hurt. And then as you do those exercises, even in a matter of a week or two, you don't have to be quite as perfect and it doesn't hurt. And then, so the window gets bigger. It gets a little easier to do. So we start with moving one joint at a time, you know, and we start adding more whole body movements. We're moving 5 or 6 joints at a time, and you can coordinate that better if your windows are all wider. You don't have to be just so perfect at it. So the optimal strength effect, based on kind of sports medicine research, is 2 to 3 sets to fatigue for 12 to 20 repetitions 3 times a week. So for a lot of us, that's a goal, is to get up to that level of workout, and that starting with once a week, 1 set of 5 might be the start, you know? So you don't want to necessarily begin with that. I usually start my patients with 1 set of whatever the activity is. I like them to be able to do at least 10 of them. If they can't, then the exercise I've given is too hard. So that tells me that I need to back it down. So sometimes I'm like, well, we just did 8 and you're toast. So next time we'll do an easier one. You know, but you're toast, so we can't do the easier one yet. The first 2 weeks of gain that you're going to find with exercise is really the neuromuscular connection. So it's getting your brain connecting to your muscles again. Because the research says if they biopsy a muscle, that it doesn't actually get stronger for that like 6 to 8 week period. You know, that's about when you start to really see it being hypertrophied and bigger and more muscle cells and all that. But people get a lot stronger in the first 2 weeks. So what is that all about? It's really about your brain being able to fire the right nerve and the right muscle, and the muscle coordinates enough to do the activity. So you can see quite a bit of change in the first 2 weeks. So usually in that time frame, I try to go with lighter exercises. So not quite so heavy, not quite working to exhaustion, but doing them maybe even more frequently. So I might give you something that's 5 days a week, just 5 reps, just to connect your brain to the muscle. Because really that's what we're doing. We're connecting your brain to the muscle. I usually tell my patients it's okay to repeat the exercise once you've recovered from your last workout. So if you're still sore from what we did 2 days ago, it's not time to do it again yet. So maybe some light stretching or that kind of a thing, but let's wait till it recovers. That's not always the case. It's not a hard rule, because sometimes if you get the muscle moving again, the stiffness goes away, and the soreness goes away. You know, so I might try them on a few reps and like, oh yeah, it does feel better. I'm like, okay, you're good. What you were feeling was just more stiffness than it was real pain. Always, we don't go above 80% of what you think you can do. When I start with a patient, I'll say 50%. So I'll usually start 0 to 10. I use that instead of percent. I'll say if a 10 is like, I couldn't possibly do 1 more rep. And a 0, like you're not doing anything. You know, I want you at 5. You know, I'm doing it. I keep doing it. It's all right. Because we may still get a really big pain response afterwards, depending on the sensitivity of the individual. So my goal is, after weeks and maybe months, maybe 6 months of exercising, if they can work at 80% of what they think they can do and hold the joints together and be working very, very hard. I would consider 80% very hard, without cheating in one place. So I'll start to teach, like, where can you cheat? If you're getting tired but you want to do a few more reps to get it at 80%, where's the safe place to cheat that you're not going to hurt yourself? And often the answer is don't go as deep of a range of motion. So if you're doing a squat, you're going way down, you know, stop part way and just do a few more and call it. So that's usually a good answer for safe. So we talked about that 5 out of 10 on the how hard am I working scale. RPE stands for rate of perceived exertion. and it has been proven to correlate with your actual exertion level. So if they measure your oxygen level and how hard you're working and your metabolism and all of that, it really correlates pretty well. So what we think and how we feel is really pretty accurate. So for the first week, 5 out of 10. The second to fourth week, about 6 out of 10. Goal of attaining 7 out of 10. And for my really coordinated people that are able to do it, that 8 out of 10. But if you just do 7, you never get past that, you're doing a lot to help retain, keep up the resiliency and thickness of your tissues. I learned about the 2-hour recovery rule from Margie Morris, a PT I used to work with. She was a pain specialist, and I like it. It basically means how much pain did you have before you exercised? It's a 10. And you exercised. 2 hours later, how much pain did you have? A 10? You didn't make yourself worse? Great, you were fine. That was the right amount of exercise. So if you are worse, then you did too much. If your pain is the same or it's a little less, that was okay. That was the right amount. If you feel a lot better, you probably could have actually exercised more. I do have some patients that get a 4-hour delay. I haven't figured out why the people with a 4-hour delay and why some people for 2 hours. So I'll change that based on the history of the patient. Or some people, and it's normal, I should say, to get the day after, 24 hours later to be sore. That's a normal muscle training effect. So if you feel sore like a workout, 24 hours later, that's normal. And then some people, especially when you start working out, will have the 2-day delay, the 48-hour delay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's normal too. So that's why I say if it's more than 2 days, it's way too much. Or if it's okay, my pain went from a 4 to an 8, and it was like that for 2 days, that's not okay. It should be okay, it went from a 4 to an 8 for the first couple hours, and it kind of sizzled down back to maybe 4 or 5. The next day I had this weird muscle soreness thing happening. I didn't like it. I didn't like it either. The next day I still had that, and then I was okay. I'm like, oh, I was actually okay. That was the right amount of soreness. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So then I didn't put it on the slide, but there are some patients, it doesn't matter. I give them the lightest thing I can think of. It's the lightest thing they can think of to do. They're still sore for 7 days after a workout. And I'm like, well, then why don't we do this? Let's just work out every 7 days. Or on the 8th day, when you recover. And then gradually it becomes 6 days, and then 5, and then 4, and then 3, and then 2, and then we finally get to a normal recovery cycle, and that works.
So, because of my pain, I lost a lot of muscle mass. And so, if I, on some things, if I cannot use the weight, can I just do not here, or just using
body
weight, yeah.
Body weight, absolutely, yeah. And so knowing where you're at, that could be a huge workout for somebody who hasn't done much with their arms. To hold the weight of the arm and do circles can be really, really heavy and a lot of burning and hard. So definitely. In fact, some of my favorite exercises are using body weight. You don't need any equipment, and they're really hard. Do a push-up on a wall or on the counter. Do body weight squats. Those are great things. Dips where you're kind of lowering yourself. And it really gets your heart rate going too. So there's a difference between strength exercises and cardiovascular exercise. Strength is more, the intention is to build the muscle. The intention of the cardiovascular is to work out your heart and blood vessels and to get them to be a little more resilient and better at pumping and stronger at pumping. That can help with your energy, it can help with your metabolism, it can help with weight loss. You can get the swollen ankles a little better, that kind of thing. But if you're really out of shape, walking, which I would consider a cardiovascular exercise, might build up your strength in the beginning. So we have to get the strength built up to a point where you're strong enough to do cardio.
I can personally cardio. I had to stop doing it because, the monitor would read that my heart rate was over 30, 40.
Big spikes.
Yeah, huge spikes. My doctor said that you can't do that because of this type of thing. However, I felt okay doing it.
Right.
So is that, I don't know if it's common, but I felt okay. I didn't want to die either.
Right.
So I stopped.
The question is, what if you get heart rate spikes? So the fancy medical word is tachycardia. a really fast heartbeat. And that's a really common EDS thing too. So it's part of the POTS, the postural orthostatic tachycardic syndrome. It's part of that dysautonomia, or not being able to balance the ups and the downs of the body. I don't think it's great to exercise above your max heart rate. So
what is the max rate?
So a real generic answer, what is the max heart rate, is take 220 and minus your age. And that's your max heart rate. There's a more specific one you can do by plugging into a formula your resting heart rate, which is how fast your heart beats first thing in the morning when you're laying in bed and nobody scares you awake. It wasn't the alarm, like not that heart rate. Like you're just laying there and it's not heart rate. That's your resting. So you can probably look online, or I can tell to you afterwards to get to what you're more specifically, because you can sometimes work out at a lot higher if you're cardiovascularly fit. So if at any point in your life you were an athlete, you have what we call collateral blood flow, or extra blood vessels around the heart, and that means your heart can do more before your heart gets strained. We don't want your heart to spasm or go into strain, which is called a heart attack.
Right.
Right? So
That's a defib coming in.
right. But so if you've got a really trained heart and it's got extra blood vessels because you were an athlete in high school, but you haven't done anything for 20 years, you probably still have those blood vessels. So you might be able to work out at a higher heart rate and still be safe. And so that's where the resting heart rate calculation is really helpful. So usually cardiovascular is defined as 50% to 80% of your max heart rate. So somewhere in that zone. Once you get above that, you're into more what we call anaerobic activity. It's the chemical equation does not require oxygen. So that means like really hard, working hard till it like dies, That's anaerobic.
And that's not good, right? Because we're not, when you're in that phase, then I'm not building muscle, I'm not burning calories, that's like a survival mode type.
Right, so the question is it okay to work in an anaerobic phase? So technically muscle strengthening is anaerobic. So it's okay for muscle strengthening if you're just doing a weightlifting thing to work out till the muscles like really hard and then done. But I would call that last bit like 70 or 80% of your max. So we talked about that, like it's not always okay to be at 80% if you're just starting. You gotta work up to it. So it's okay to work there, but if you're just doing that, you're not doing any cardio, so 50 to 80, you tend to have a higher stress chemical release. So like I love to play soccer. Well, that's a bunch of sprinting, and that's anaerobic, and it actually brings my stress hormones up. So now my cortisol level's higher, it's gonna be harder to fall asleep and stay asleep, and that's not good. So the other thing I would do is I would take my kids to the preschool and I'd be late, so I'd be like, pushing them in the stroller and thinking I'm getting my cardio, but I'm not. It's completely anaerobic, and it was adding to my stress and reducing my ability to sleep. So staying in that heart rate zone, or in that perceived how hard am I working zone, I'm in my 50 to 80% is really important to lower your stress hormones. So some of the sleep research says that the most ideal time to exercise for cardio to help sleep is about 5 hours before you go to bed. So if you go to bed at 10, work out at 5. So it's like the after work hours tend to be the best. Most of us go to bed at midnight. I know because the Facebook page is like happening at 12.
I was going to say, isn't it more like 2?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
So we're like 7 p.m. on the workout in that case to help out. But I usually try to leave at least an hour or two. So sometimes it's like you're just trying to get it in and life has happened, and like try to give yourself like at least 1 or 2 hours before bedtime. And then you want to go a little lighter probably. You want to really be sure you're not getting that stress hormone kicked in by going above 80%. So the things that cardio does, it increases your circulation. It helps to remove waste products from your body that make you sore and achy. So it's helpful to do some of that with your strengthening, or like the day after your strengthening, you can do some of your cardio, and that can actually make you feel better and less sore. It always seems very wrong to have worked out one day and be sore the next, but I'm going to go for a walk. And that actually can help with the stiff feeling and the sore feeling. It gets lactic acid, which is a byproduct of it. So, and back to the chemical equations. Water is part of the equation for cardiovascular exercise. Like if you have water, it'll help to boost the metabolism and get your body fat to start to burn. So if you're dehydrated, that's a big problem too. and I can go off on that for just a moment. Most of us feel thirsty all the time, or have dry eyes. It's really common. And so drinking more water can actually dehydrate you more. So you have to have electrolytes in your water. So that's a whole nother long talk, but it could be our kidneys are pulling off our electrolytes when they pull off water. It could be part of the stress state that you lose electrolytes in a stress state or burn them up a little quicker.
Dry sinuses as well with the dry.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, and so you can actually be dehydrating yourself. Because your body wants to maintain a certain percentage of electrolytes in the blood, and so if you're putting in water with no electrolytes, it's watering you down, so then you're going to pee off all of that. And then you're not maintaining your blood volume. So you've got to get the electrolytes in so that you have that to hold more blood volume. So your blood pressure's up, and you're not lightheaded and dizzy, and you're not thirsty all the time.
So it's like, for electrolytes, can you just get Gatorade or?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
you can get Gatorade.
Straight or- yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
I don't love Gatorade because of the food coloring and like it has garbage in it. So some of the favorites of the Eating Up conference, Noon tablets, NUUN. They're sold at, I know REI and they're sold online. NUUN has the highest concentration out there in a tablet form of electrolytes. They're a little bit pricey, and I don't go to REI that often. So I'll use Electromix, which is just electrolytes without all the vitamins, without sugar and food coloring, and you just pour it in your water.
Okay.
It's sold at New Seasons. One packet makes a liter of water. The other one is Emergency. It's made by the same company,
Yeah.
but it has a bunch of vitamins in it too. And so usually we need vitamins because we don't absorb them really well. We need high levels of vitamin C. Some people have trouble converting B vitamins into a usable form, and they have what's called a methylation issue. So if you're one of those people, you don't want to take Emergency because it's got too many B vitamins, and it'll start to build up in your system, which can become toxic. So making sure that you're not one of those people would be helpful. Question?
Yeah, the emergency electrolytes don't have any salt in it, and I found it just didn't do anything for me. So the Noon I felt helped better because it does have some salt in it. So and they sell it at Vitamin Shop.
Vitamin shot too.
Okay.
So the
It's not
comment
bad.
there was that the Noon tablets have salt in them, they seem to work better, whereas the Emergency does not, and so doesn't work as well.
I mean, for me.
Yeah, but that was the general
Right.
consensus at the EDNF conference too, was that the Noon tablets work better.
Yeah.
So now what I found is I put like a quarter teaspoon of Himalayan salt in half gallon of water. And I
Yeah.
just drink that.
Yeah, so you can do that. You can just put salt in your water, it's kind of gross.
Well, yeah.
I prefer to eat the salt in the bottom of the potato chip bag and then drink some water with it.
Okay, yeah.
Well, yeah, I prefer something like Himalayan salt because it's got all the different salts.
Yeah,
Instead of